Hey, what's going on, people, and welcome to another episode of Real Talk with Marcus McCoy. I am your host, Marcus McCoy. Definitely, glad to be back. We're going to be talking about an important election that's coming up. It is the for the position of El Paso County Sheriff, and we want you all to, invite you if you're looking, tune in, check out the show. This is an important conversation. But today's guest is Minerva Torres Shelton. She's actually a candidate for the position. She has a very extensive background in law enforcement, and she's going to come in and provide some perspective on, her thoughts about the position, why she's running, and overall why people should get behind her for this position. So, thank you for coming on today's show.
Yes, I want to say first, thank you, Marcus and Monica, for inviting me. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell the listeners about yourself.
So to tell you a little bit about myself, I was actually born in Oxnard, California, but shortly after I was born, I went to Mexico. So my first language is Spanish.
Right.
I came back to the States when I was 9 years old or 8 years old. And I, went to school here. I went to the University of New Mexico. After graduating from the university, I went to the military briefly. Then I transferred over to the El Paso PD, where I served 5 years here in the central area.
Right.
And then I went into the FBI, where I served 21 years. I worked counterterrorism matters and criminal matters. My last 5 years in the FBI, I was a supervisory special agent, and retired a few months ago just so I could step into this role to run to be the next sheriff here in El Paso.
That is awesome. First of all, I want to thank you for your service and your commitment to El Paso and just the nation in general. It's
thank you.
Really great to hear. I know there's probably a lot of people asked you this question, but I have to ask. We'll go ahead and we're going to just dive right into it. Why do you want to be the El Paso County Sheriff?
That's an excellent question. So there's a lot of reasons why I stepped into this role. But really, my passion is serving the community. I've done that, my whole adult life. One of the things that I noticed a few years before I retired is I noticed there was a growing distance between law enforcement and the community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what needs to happen in order to resolve the problems, especially the ones that we're facing here in El Paso. And so there's so many things. Youth crime is on the rise. A lot of the traffickers, drug traffickers, human traffickers are luring our young people into committing criminal activity. And they're doing it through TikTok videos, through social media. And in order to resolve those problems, we need to work with the community. We need to work with other law enforcement agencies. So again, that is one of the reasons why I stepped into this role. But so as I was getting ready to retire, thinking I knew that I was going to step into another role serving my community. But really when I knew what I had to do was I had actually been approached by several people that I should consider running for sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my background and the experience that I had. And then one morning, I see an article that pops on my feed. And it was an article where we had several political candidates endorsing a candidate who he hadn't even announced that he was going to run for sheriff. And these political figures were already encouraging this other candidate to jump into the sheriff's race. And I felt something in my heart that stirred me that said, no, the sheriff's position belongs to the people. And it should be the people who are going to elect our next sheriff, not any politician. And so that's when I knew that this was the moment that I needed to step into this role.
Okay, absolutely, absolutely. So let's just, if you kind of mentioned, and we talked about it a few minutes ago about having this extensive background in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. How do you feel that background has prepared you, or I would say put you in a position to make it to where you are ready to step into this role if elected?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, my extensive background and being an investigator, I've learned so much. What makes me more qualified than the other candidates is because I have vast experience. I've been in the local, in the state role, in the federal role, and I know what it's going to take in order to combat these organized crime that we're seeing happening here at the border. None of the other candidates have that. So I am the only candidate who has that perspective, who can see how we can resolve those issues. And again, like I tell people, if I were to go back and be a patrol officer right now, I'd be the best patrol officer ever, because now I know what it takes to put cases together. When you're out there responding to a call, I know what questions to ask, what to look for, what kind of evidence is needed for a case. And so that's what I'm bringing into this role. I know what it's going to take to resolve the problems that we're facing, the increase in crime. One of the things right now is I'm talking to people. A lot of people are worried, are scared. And one of the things that they're worried about is people don't even feel safe driving down the freeway because of the erratic driving, the crazy drivers. It's just that we don't have the enforcement that we used to have before to prevent that from happening. So again, I have the vast experience. I had the honor and privilege of being at FBI headquarters. So I was in charge of an operation that involved the 56 FBI field offices. That was a major operation that took over a year for me to coordinate and lead. And so it was very successful. So again, it was 56 field offices, and there was a total of 85 task forces. My days were long. I would arrive very early in the office, leave very late at night. But at the end, it was very successful. And so again, I have the experience, not just from a local perspective. And the other thing that is a positive, as far as my experience, is that I'm an outsider. I'm going to arrive and I'm going to look at the budget. I'm going to say, okay, how is this budget being utilized? Where do we need to move the money? Where is it going? Because there's no visibility, there's no transparency, and there's no accountability right now. There isn't. We're not seeing that information come out. So as coming from the outside, I'm going to look at the data. I'm going to look at the information and make decisions based on that without having those relationships or those loyalties built in there. So that's the best type of leader, somebody that is going to work for the community, somebody that is going to serve the community.
Oh, you must have my questions in my head. Because I was just, that was actually one of my questions about accountability and transparency. I know when we spoke a couple weeks back, that was two of the main points that you emphasize is accountability and just being transparent. Is there a particular reason, or do you think just from your experience that those are two things that obviously for me, I'm going to say yes, that just comes along with being in that position? So it's a two-part question. That's the first part. And then knowing the duties and the responsibilities of the El Paso County Sheriff. I think when it comes to politics and things of that nature, it's many times overlooked or misunderstood. So can you provide like some insight on the duties and responsibilities of that office as well?
Okay. So I'll, if I forget to answer one of them, please remind me. I got you. So, because I have so many things in my head that I want to communicate to your listeners. So there's no visibility and no transparency. And why do I say that? If you go to their website right now, to the sheriff's website, the latest annual report, and the annual report is the one that tells you what crime we're seeing, how is your hard-earned money being utilized in the sheriff's department. It's from 2016. Like, that is not visibility.
Oh, wow.
That is not transparency. Like, I had to file a FOIA report, a Freedom of Information Act, in order to, and it might be called differently locally, but that's what we called it in the federal system.
Right.
So I had to request it that way. And initially I said, I want to know what, how our money is being used in the sheriff's department. I want to know the crimes occurring inside the jail. And the response was that my request was going to cost too much money.
Oh, wow.
So now I had to, okay, let me reword maybe I didn't provide enough information. So I did reword. I said, look, every year the Sheriff's Department provided an annual report. You can go to the website and it stops in 2016. So I said, I just want the latest annual reports. Can you give me the latest annual reports? So they gave me the latest, but it's so confusing. That's not visibility.
Right.
You should be able to go to the website and get an idea, okay, how many vehicle thefts are happening in the county? How many registered sex offenders are living in the county? How many homes have been burglarized? But when you go, it's not user friendly.
That's what I was just going to ask, because when you say that's the first thought came to my head was it's not user friendly, and it's probably not as practical. The citizens want something that they could just read and break down in layman's terms, so it's not uneasy or difficult to understand.
Yes, correct. And so that's one of the things that I want to do is I want, in addition to meeting with the community in person, I want to be able to provide feedback through the website where you can just go learn how your hard-earned money is being used, because it is your money. It doesn't belong to the sheriffs. It's coming from the people. And so here's the other thing, that lack of visibility and transparency. What's happening in the jail? The amount of deaths that are happening. Now, natural deaths, of course, they're going to happen. But when you have from 2020 to 2022, we had 9 suicides and 4 deaths because of overdoses. So that is a lot in 2 years. And again, are they going to happen? Okay, so they happen. What are we doing about it? How did we, as a leader, you get up in front of the community, you talk about, okay, we had this incident happen. This is what I'm doing to prevent future ones. We've had 0 information since the latest death that happened about that inmate. Tell us, like, what was fixed to prevent that from happening again? So that's not visibility. So I hope, that's the reason, that's what I'm seeing. Over the past 10 years, we've had 50 deaths categorized as natural, categorized as suicide, and accidental. What's an accidental death? Like, I don't know. So I would like to get that information, and it shouldn't be a secret. Why? Because as law enforcement, we serve the community, we enforce the law, and we follow the Constitution. So again, it's not happening. That's one of the things that I plan to do, is revamp the website so where it's user friendly. You can go gather that information in case you're doing a podcast and you want to talk about the crime you're seeing in the county. You should just go in there and get a general idea of what is happening. It shouldn't be a secret.
Okay, that's excellent. That's excellent. I like that the transition of having a more connectivity to the community, so the community knows what's going on. They have to guess, and like you said about transparency. So, what for those who may not know, what are the primary duties of the El Paso County Sheriff?
So the duties of the sheriff is you cover the county. So you do the patrol area, which is going to be covered by the sheriff's, just the county, and then you do the jail. So, and again, we just talked about the jail, about the things that are happening. That the other thing that I would like to add about the jail is that there's a big backlog of cases that are just sitting there. Like, if I committed a crime and I went to jail, and now I've served my time waiting to have my case, but yet my case still hasn't been assigned. I'm just sitting there. That's not fair to people. I realize that they committed a crime, but that's part of the speedy process that we're supposed to have in place. So as your next sheriff, I will work with the DA's office to get rid of that backlog. So to make sure that we don't have people just sitting there waiting. Because why? Because that's costing your money. So by holding another person there longer than they should be, it's costing all of us money. Same thing, the suicides. Somebody dies in jail because they committed suicide, because of the overdose, more than likely the family is going to file a lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the sheriff's department has a secret stash of money that they just have there. No, we're going to have to pay for it. So these are the important things that need to be addressed that are not happening. So to answer your question, you do the patrol, and then you do the jail. And as your next sheriff, I want to work with the community. I'm going to be engaged with the community. Yes, we enforce the law, we follow the Constitution, but I have an obligation to inform the community about what's happening. Because then maybe if you're listening to me at a town hall or maybe at a podcast that I come in here as your next sheriff and we're talking about what we're seeing, one of your listeners is going to get passionate and said, you know what? They're having that kind of problem. You know what? I know how we can resolve that, or I want to get involved. And so again, it's about us working together. And that's the way it used to be before, the community policing, where deputies or officers would go and talk to the business owners, maybe have a coffee at a small restaurant or talk to the owners. And why is that important? Because then the owners will feel more connected to you, and they're going to look at you as somebody that they can just pick up the phone and call, not as somebody who's up here and who cannot be reached.
Gotcha. So you bring a level of relatability that you probably assume or would say has not been seen in the past.
Yes.
Okay. I think for those of you watching, I want to say definitely I think relatability is a big thing, because sometimes when we elect city officials or just officials to represent an area or a position in general, they can kind of get up here on this perch where, before, let's say when they were in the midst of campaigning, you saw them, they were visible, they came to speak at your events, and then they get here and then it's just like, well, what happened to that person? So I think that is a definitely a great point of being able to be contactable and reachable, because again, we're saying how the citizens are using their hard-earned money to make these things happen. You want to be able to have a leader that you can talk to and reach out to. I want to double back on we were talking about the suicides in that atmosphere. What are your thoughts on I don't know, maybe like mental health or improvement of mental health as far as it relates to that particular position?
So again, because of the lack of visibility and transparency, I really don't know how the current sheriff is doing the mental health. But that is one of the areas that I plan to work on, because first, look at what's being done.
Right.
Is it working? And if it's not working, then we need to fix it. But again, I'm not an expert on mental health. I'm not. But I will certainly talk to the professionals. I know you previously mentioned your involvement and what you're doing as far as the mental health. You would be somebody that I would consider an expert to bring in and do that round table, have those discussions. So that's the other thing that as your next sheriff that I want to do is I want to create a group of people, of experts who are going to come in, and we're going to meet however often we're going to meet, and where we're going to discuss and talk about ideas of what we're seeing and how we can solve the problem. Because again, there isn't that connection happening right now. And so I really don't know. I wish I knew what the current sheriff is doing, but there's no information. And to go back a little bit about what you're saying about elected officials, that when they're running, everything's great. They talk about all these programs that they're doing for the schools, or they're out there. But if you look at when it started when they started campaigning. So look at the person, look at what their history has been. I've had a history of, being engaged with the community, going to areas normally not visited by other agents in the FBI. This is when I was in the FBI. And why did I do that? I did it for two reasons. One is that if I go and talk to your church or somebody's church and you're like, oh, well, something happens, who you're going to reach out. Now I'm more approachable. Now you can find me. The other thing is that I want to encourage the young people to aspire to be something else, not to, and usually because it takes somebody that looks like you, that talks like you, that's approachable, that's going to make you think, wow, if she did it, I can certainly do it.
Absolutely.
And so that's the reason, because I'm a firm believer in the future generation. I say this often. My dad used to have a saying that I didn't like hearing it back then, because my father was my hero. He really is. He really was. I'm here because of him. He talked about education all the time. But as he was getting older, he would always say, I'm packing my bags, meaning that he was getting ready to leave this world.
Right.
And it was sad. I didn't like hearing it. But I'm like, now that I'm older, I'm like thinking, wow, I'm maybe getting there, packing my bags. And, I just want to be able to someday say that I gave it my best to leave this a better world, to try to encourage the young people, inspire the future generation is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. So I know that, at least from my standpoint, money is always a thing that I want to know what's going on. I want to know how the money's being spent. So if you are elected, how will you manage the department's budget and resources? Because I know that's something that most people, that's like one of the first things they go to. So if you are in the seat, what are you going to do with those resources in that budget?
So one is I'm going to look at the budget. That's going to happen like within the first 30 days. That's going to be the immediate thing.
Okay.
Look at the money. Where is the money going? Because it's very hard to know where all the money is going now. And how can we improve? One, do the deputies have everything that they need? Do they have the necessary equipment in order to train? Because that's very important, making sure that they have all the needed stuff that they need. And second of all, like I mentioned, where can we save money? Because it's going to help the community. Because right now we're hurting. Everybody's hurting. At least I see it. Like you go to the store, everything's more expensive. The goods, the packages are getting smaller. But again, so the jail, the backlog. How many cases do we have that are backlogged? The people that could be out now that they served their time, and get them out of there. Work with the DA's office to make sure that happens. So that's one of the ways where you can cut as far as, where is this? So look at all the areas. And again, that's why it's important to bring somebody from the outside who has the experience, somebody who can look at the budget and say, okay, how is the budget being used? Where can we cut some of this budget? Where can we add? Where do we need to add? So look at it. And again, I haven't been part of the sheriff's department, so I'm at a great position to look at things and do things differently, because again, it's all about working for the community, saving the community. How can we save money? What needs to be done in order to, to make it better?
All right. And then you're coming from, like I said, being on the outside, you're coming from a place of having a fresh perspective too, as well.
And if I could just add a little bit. So one of the other things that I want to do that is part of my platform is, so part of the promotion packets for anybody who becomes a sergeant or above, they're going to have to be responsible for a community project. Why do I say that? Because there's other candidates who have talked about, I'm going to bring a group of people from the outside and they're going to go out there and meet with the community. No, that's not how we built relationships. We built relationships by connecting directly with the community. So it shouldn't be a community making contact with the community. It should be deputies making contact with the community. And this shouldn't be difficult to do for somebody who wants to promote, because that's why we come in. Most of us come into law enforcement because we want to serve the community. So in addition to that, they're going to have to be responsible. Who have you mentored within the department? And the reason I said that so I don't know if you read an article that came out in the news about the sheriff's department, where there was a young person, he was in high school, who had left his cell phone home and needed a ride. He didn't have a ride. He didn't have a way of calling his parents. So he talked to one of the deputies who was working, school resource officers, about being taken home. And I think the article mentions about, it looked like this deputy made a few calls, or I don't know. I don't know what happened again. But he ended up giving that 16 or 17-year-old the ride home, but he handcuffed him to take him home. And then the justification that came from that was that the deputy thought he had to handcuff everybody that he was giving a ride home, or anybody, if you transport somebody, they had to be handcuffed. So I see that as a leadership problem. Because I totally understand as a new person, and I don't know how many years this deputy had been on, but there's so many policies that you're responsible for. So I get it, but that's why your leadership is there. So that's the other thing that anybody who wants to promote is going to have to give examples of how have you led, who have you mentored in the department to improve. And the other thing, one of the things that's happening in the jail, the fentanyl that is getting inside, the drugs that are going inside the prison. How many that are in the jail have investigative experience? You know how I was telling you that if I go back to being a patrol officer, now I would know a lot more because now I have investigative experience. So it's going to be the same thing for the sheriff's department.
Right.
If you want to promote, part of your promotion packet, you're going to have to go do time in the jail to take your expertise and experience inside the jail, because that's how we're going to resolve the problems that we're having with because there's things happening with the commissary too, hiding funds or things. But the only way we're going to fix that is by getting experience in there. So again, these are part of the changes that I want to do. And so, did I answer your question?
Absolutely.
If not, go ahead and ask me the question again.
Random thought. I don't know if I ever told you. I was a correction officer about 20 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think now that you mention it, yes.
I think we had that company. Yeah, I was working in Mississippi as a correction officer.
So now that we're talking, I mean, these are the reasons why I'm having this, because I worked cases or oversaw supervised cases where some of the money was being moved through the commissary accounts, and they're getting very organized on how they hide that money. It's harder for the investigator to figure out, okay, it's no longer going from one person in jail to another person outside. They're doing things differently to hide the money. Right. And again, only somebody with investigative experience can go in there and provide guidance to the detention officers.
Absolutely. Great point. What hurdles have you faced so far as you started this journey and campaign to attain this position?
Yeah, excellent question. I think the hurdles that my campaign has faced is something that all the campaigns face, is how do I get my message out there? I'm an unknown. And so trying to figure out, okay, how do I get people to hear about my message, what I want to do? And so I've been doing a lot, thank goodness, for podcasts like yours. I get my message out. Just recently, I attended an event, and he was actually, because I'm getting support from both sides, from the Democrats and Republicans both, because really as a sheriff, you're not going to represent one party, you represent everybody. But he approached me at an event and he introduced himself. He says, hey, I just want to let you know that I learned about you from a podcast you did. And I did that podcast maybe about 3 months ago, I think, or 2 or 3 months ago. And this podcast didn't have that many listeners. But guess what? I gained one supporter through that podcast. And so that's why I am very thankful to be here with you and Monica for giving me this opportunity to connect with your listeners, because that's how I'm getting my message out. Maybe I'm working twice as hard, but you know what? The day when the election is over in November is when I'm probably going to collapse of being tired, because I'm going everywhere, but I got to get my message out.
Absolutely.
So those are one of the hurdles that I would consider as part of this campaign, is how do we better get our message out there? Where do I need to go? And again, I am attending all kinds of events, talking to people, knocking on doors, talking to people to get my name out there. And again, the traction is positive. I will be making an announcement very soon. We're not there yet, but just to show that the amount of support that I'm getting is very it humbles me and it honors me, because people trust me that I am running for the right reasons. I'm not running because, because of the money or because of the attention. No, I am running because as the people's sheriff, because I want to work with the community to resolve the problems that we're facing. And I'm not just running as a people's sheriff. This campaign belongs to the people. So if you want to get on board and help out, please send me an email or contact me through my website, because again, I need all the support.
Absolutely. So I before we get ready to close, I want to definitely thank you for coming on.
Oh my goodness, it's over already?
Yeah.
That was quick.
Yeah,
I thought we were getting started.
They say time flies when you're having fun.
I really did. I thought we were at the beginning. I was like, I was thinking maybe I'm talking too fast and I need to slow down.
No, you're just fine. As we get into our final thoughts, what do you want to leave the listeners with?
Excellent question. So I briefly touched on it before, that I am getting support from both parties because people are very encouraged by what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I've noticed is people are very confused, because it is confusing on how it works. And so real quick, primaries, anybody, when we vote for the primaries, either you vote Democrat or you vote Republican. Mm-hmm. So you can't mix both. And then everybody who voted for during the primaries is going to be able to vote again come November. So come November 5th, or, early voting happens before November 5th, you can vote again, and you can vote for anybody that you want. You don't have to stay along the party lines. You can pick some that are Republican, you can pick some that are Democrat, and that's what I encourage everybody to do. Look at the candidates, see who they've been, what they've done in their past, because I'm not talking about working from the community, with the community. I've done it all throughout my career, and it's there for you to see. It's not something new. So look at the candidates, look at who they are, what their past has been. So again, that's my last words that I would like to share with the community, that as the next sheriff, I want to work with both sides, Democrats and Republicans, because we need to fix too many people. The same people have been in control in El Paso. We need to change that. The opportunities for anybody to run should be like you. If you want to run, you should be able to run. You shouldn't have to shake hands with certain politicians in order for you, because now you're going to serve them. And I don't want to I encourage small donations. Why? Because I want to serve the community.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. We actually got a couple comments we want to go to. Can we bring these comments up? All right. Terrence Dingle says, I love the fact that Ms. Torres is showing a fresh new perspective on law.
Oh, thank you.
Then he also says, fresh blood is always needed. Sometimes things get stagnant, and we all know stagnant water stinks. Fresh and new ways of doing things are much needed. Okay, definitely appreciate the comments.
Yes.
Would you like to comment on that, or?
No, I think thank you so much for saying that. It's so true. New perspective is good for any organization. Even during my time in the FBI, I had the honor and privilege of being in different field offices. And so when I came back to El Paso, I was like, why are we doing this way? Oh, well, that's the way we've always done it. But there's a better way of doing it. We don't have to do it this way. And so again, when you have people that have been in the same organization, they tend to do the same things over and over, the same. When you bring fresh perspective, you get new ideas. So thank you, Terrence, for saying that.
Absolutely. All right, so people, you have choices to make, you have decisions to make. That is why we have voices. That's why we have platforms. That's why we have earned the right to vote on our leaders at all levels. I want to invite you guys to tune in to the next episode of Real Talk with Marcus McCoy. But until then, El Paso, it has been real.